Palm Sunday is the solemn beginning of Holy Week. And we often have a kind of schizophrenic sense of this day. We have the joy of the blessing of palms and the story of Jesus arriving in Jerusalem. And then we move to the Passion Gospel and the horror of the crucifixion. On Palm Sunday, we hear two stories. The first is the story of Jesus riding into Jerusalem in triumph and in defiance. And the second journey is the journey to Golgotha, which is a journey of humiliation and defiance. And we sometimes get so preoccupied with the differences between these two journeys that we forget that at the center of both of them is Jesus as the defiant one. Jesus defying the forces of greed, of ambition, of conformity. And at each scene in the Passion Gospel, each scene in this story that we will repeat over and over again this week, from the exuberant streets of Jerusalem to the intimate supper with his friends, to the abandonment in the garden, to the council of the Jews and the fire-lit courtyard where Peter denies him, to the journey to Golgotha, to that lonely mountaintop. At the center of each scene is Jesus Christ as the face of God, unbent and unmoved by human brutality and cruelty, and unwavering in the steadiness of courageous compassion. And so this week we walk that way with Jesus, not because we have to. God didn't tell us we had to do this. We are freely accepting the invitation of Jesus to follow him. And this too is two journeys. It's a journey away from self-righteousness, self-justification, self-aggrandizement, and shame, and a journey toward the silence and the solitude of forgiveness and love. Every time we take this journey, every year, it's slightly different. Every year, it's in uncharted territory. This year is unlike any that any of us have experienced and will experience. But it's always uncharted territory. We really never know what we're going to discover in the darkness of our own hearts. The writer Brendan Manning once asked Mother Teresa to pray for him. And so she asked him, "What would you like me to pray for?" And he said, "Pray that I will have clarity." And she answered in what I assume was typical Mother Teresa manner, "I'm not going to pray for that. I'm going to pray that you have trust." Trust is the basis for all productive action. Trust is the basis of all the simplest and most complex relationships. Trust is the soil on which our souls grow. And our journey this week is a journey through whatever obstacles we have set up to trusting, that we may pick them up, examine them, and put them aside. Most of our barriers to trust make sense. They're sensible, but there's still barriers. There's still obstacles on the way of love. There's still obstacles to growth. There's still obstacles to becoming who we were created to be. When we think of Jesus on the cross, and he turned to the thief dying next to him, and he asked that thief to trust him. Now, this thief was no doubt a man who had spent his whole life learning you don't trust anybody. And in fact, his death itself, his arrest and crucifixion, was probably evidence of a betrayal of trust. And who was he? So who was he to trust in the first place? But to trust this former person who had been very popular and widely known, who was abandoned, who was being hung for blasphemy and treason? Why would anyone trust that humiliated, degraded human being? But the thief trusted him. Against everything he himself had learned about the world, in the face of everything that seemed to be true of the man who was asking him to trust. And surely, if that thief can trust in Jesus as the face of God, surely we can grow into trusting Jesus Christ, the face of God. So let us walk this journey together. This year especially, it's important that we are mindful of the fact that we're not walking alone, and that we are walking with people we cannot see or touch, and we are walking for people that we cannot see or touch. We are walking for the people who feel they're completely isolated. We are walking for the people who feel there is no God to whom they can cry out. We are walking for the people who feel that they are lost in a wasteland where there is no way, there is no path. And we are walking as Christ, achieving the balance that Christ sought. The balance between darkness and light, between earth and heaven, between brutality and tenderness, between shame and forgiveness. That balance is the sign of the cross for us. That's why in our tradition, the cross replaces the crucifix, because we focus in this moment and in this week in living out and embodying the union of these complicated opposites. And we live out the balance